This newscast with all the latest coming in on the Quad meet, which is taking place in Tokyo currently. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo held a meeting on the sidelines of the Quad summit in Tokyo today. This was the first face-to-face meeting between Jaishankar and Pompeo amid border tensions between India and China and the coronavirus outbreak. The talks came as Washington and New Delhi prepare for the third 2+2 dialogue, which is expected to be held later this month. The US Secretary of State also met with Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. Pompeo hailed Suga as a force for good and said that he believes that Suga will work to strengthen the relationship between Washington and Tokyo.
Prime Minister Suga was a powerful force for good when he served for this relationship too, when he was the Chief Cabinet Secretary. And the United States has every reason to believe he will strengthen our enduring alliance in his new role. In his first statement after assuming office, Prime Minister Suga described a free and open Indo-Pacific as, quote, the foundation of regional peace and stability, end of quote. I could not agree more.
And so the foreign ministers of all Quad countries, that is India, Japan, US and Australia, also met today. They will be holding formal talks, and the leaders are likely to discuss the post-COVID world order and the need for a coordinated response to various challenges emerging from the pandemic. The meet comes amid increasing tensions between all four Quad members and China. That is an interesting angle. For more on this story, let's quickly go across to our guest, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, who is joining us live from New Delhi. At this hour, Ambassador has served as an ambassador to Germany. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining our broadcast today. Let's get in a sense of perspective on how the Quad meet can impact the geopolitical dynamics. Now, despite rounds of corps commander level talks, diplomatic level talks, even meetings between the foreign and defense ministers, the disengagement at several friction points in eastern Ladakh still remains stalled. How can India address the LAC issue through the Quad?
I think one of the things India is doing is to be less predictable in its responses to China. So I think the unpredictability of the Indian response today is perhaps the most perplexing thing which China faces, and they will need to be more predictable to us. In this, the expansion of the contention in the Indo-Pacific is one of those factors which India is now bringing into play. Till about 2017-18, India was quite content to assuage Chinese feelings on the intention of the Quad. And the Quad was largely portrayed as a coordinating body getting together for humanitarian assistance. But I think for the second time now, in 2 years, the foreign ministers are physically meeting of the Quad. And this is despite COVID.
Right.
And this indicates that there will be a more robust engagement between the members of the quadrilateral security dialogue. And this dialogue will go beyond security from now on.
Right. Ambassador, it's interesting that you mentioned the whole evolution of the Quad as a body itself. Can the Quad play a crucial role in countering China's growing clout? Also, how can Quad countries thwart China's growing aggression in the Indo-Pacific, something you just mentioned?
You know, there is this issue of the Chinese bringing their naval forces into play into the South China Sea and pushing ASEAN to the brink. Now, the only people who are waving their navies and running them through the South China Sea are the navies of the Quad. They are exercising together, they are going together, even with some of the ASEAN navies. The second, so certainly the security coordination, common exercises, and common humanitarian assistance and disaster relief is bound to be increased. Secondly, the diplomatic coordination at ministerial level now is becoming a regular feature. And the third and most important is that despite India leaving RCEP, there is much greater coordination, particularly between India, Japan, and Australia, to deal with resilient value chains as a reaction to COVID and what China has been doing with economies. And so strategic economic coordination, I think, is now going to be the norm.
Very well said. Ambassador, there's much tension brewing over trade also between China and the United States and China and Australia. Japan also wants to reduce its dependence on China for manufacturing. Can the Quad help reshaping trade in a post-COVID world?
Trade is much more difficult, but certainly, for instance, Japan has become more amenable to renegotiating the CEPA with India. I think the Australians, who were pretty difficult in RCEP to India, are today showing strategic sense in trying to start FTA negotiations with India. So yes, there is a fallout, but I think the most important thing is new investments to find complementarities so you can find alternate value chains to the ones which are currently in China.
Right.
I do not see a replacement, but I certainly see a devolution coming up. But the Chinese are not quiet. The Chinese are offering Japan, a dual capacity arrangement, which is still amorphous. The Chinese are investing more in, the Japanese treasury bonds. So I think you will see counteractions everywhere.
Counteractions and, as you said, alternate supply chains. That's, I think, an ideal way to put it. Ambassador, last but not the least, Japan is also engaged in a fight with China over the Senkaku Islands. Can Japan help in mobilizing the bloc of Southeast Asian nations to counter China in the Indo-Pacific?
It is everybody's hope that ASEAN, who wants centrality in all discussions, will also become more responsible and reactive. But I don't think that is happening because ASEAN by nature is not a realist. It is more a functional organization. They don't really have a coordinated defense policy. So I think that is going to be difficult. But the Japanese take ASEAN very seriously. Their investment in infrastructure in ASEAN is double that of China despite BRI. And the Prime Minister Suga of Japan will be making his first physical visits later this month to Vietnam and Indonesia, the two leading countries of ASEAN, Vietnam being the chairman and Jakarta hosting the ASEAN Secretariat. So even though not counting for that much in power terms, I think ASEAN is going to continue to be one of the fulcrums of Quad policy.
Absolutely, and a lot is going to emerge. We have expectations for sure. We are also going to be seeing a 2+2 dialogue happening very soon in India as well between the two foreign ministers. For now, thank you so much, Ambassador, for bringing us your precious inputs and joining our broadcast here at WION.